Welcome, and thank you for joining us for Rebuilding the Republic, presented by the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany. My name is Paul Grandal. I'm the director of the Writers Institute. This is a special series of presentations related to the theme, Rebuilding the Republic. These authors and their books explore the political and social forces that are demanding a serious re-examination of this nation's core democratic principles. Before I introduce today's guest, Mark Green, let me remind you that this and all of our author interviews can be found on our Writers Institute YouTube channel. They're also archived there, so you can view them at your convenience. You can also go to our website, nyswritersinstitute.org. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you like this programming you hear today and want to support it, you can make a donation on our website, nyswritersinstitute.org. We'd be extremely grateful for that. So let me say a few words about today's guest, Mark Green. He's a public interest lawyer and a former elected public advocate and consumer commissioner of New York City. He's also the author of 24 books, including most recently, Wrecking America, How Trump's Lawbreaking and Lies Betray All. And just before that, Fake President, Decoding Trump's Gaslighting, Corruption, and General Bullshit. Both books were co-authored with Ralph Nader. Mark Green, thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you, Paul. I really enjoy talking to you, students, and whoever else may be stealing this off the internet.
Thanks for joining us. This is a very interesting, well-written, researched, fiercely argued book about our former president. But let me start. I know you and Ralph Nader have been working on at least 10 books or more going back 50 years. How did you two first connect or first meet?
I was a second-year law student at Harvard Law School and was thinking about what to do that summer. And when I got out of law school, Ralph came by, gave a lecture, and I was among the students. You know how we do it. They cluster around the famous guest. We spent some time talking. And when it came time for me to decide what to do, I had a choice of being kind of a intern associate, junior associate, Mayor John Lindsay, or working for Ralph. Of course, if I had gone with Lindsay, I would have ended up just another New York politician, which happened anyway. I went to work for Ralph because I thought he was sui generis. I mean, there are dozens of great feminists, historians, journalists. There's only one Ralph Nader, really.
Right.
And so I started in 1970, and 15,000 phone calls, and 50 years later, that's the numbers, we're still working together.
That's great. So I know this book, Wrecking America, you know, he wrote an introduction. And then how did you divide the labor? Did you share files? Did you talk on the phone?
I had the verbs, and I let him have the adjectives and nouns. So, and their co-authors can be envious or jealous. I'm never that with Ralph. He's Ralph Nader, and I immensely respect him, temperament and intellect and vision. And so we divided up it into first topics, lies, BS, and then what the truth is. Let's say military comments, economic comments, immigration comments, each had a chapter. I did most of those with some research assistants. And Ralph, who is a visionary, did sort of the introduction, the conclusion, and the structure, the architecture of the book. We had almost no disagreements. We both thought Trump was the Lion King. I'm just the most corrupt, empty-headed, vicious person ever to get close to, if not in the presidency. We had one disagreement. We tried to figure out what the hell happened that Hillary Clinton could lose to this guy. And Ralph wanted me to blame not only certain things that the Russians or Jim Comey et cetera, did, but the terrible campaign that Hillary ran. Now, this reflected the difference that while Ralph and I really share a lot of views, I'm a practicing progressive Democrat. He's not. He's quite independent, if you haven't noticed.
Right.
And is a radical in the best sense of the word. For example, in the year 2000, I was as close to Ralph as I was to anyone outside my family, but I was the ranking Democrat in New York City as the elected public advocate, the mayor at the time. I was next in line to Rudy Giuliani, of course, a Republican. And so I basically had to think whether I would vote for Gore or Nader. And I ended up voting for Gore because I'd gotten elected as a Democrat, and I would have felt like I was betraying my party. Ralph was amazed, but he understood party and public fidelity. I couldn't do something so inconsistent.
Right. So we're going to talk about, I mean, you really dissect the presidency of Trump, but I'm certain you crossed paths with him as a developer under a lot of cloud of scandal and investigation all his years in New York. When did you first meet Trump, and did you have any, as public advocate, where you had to, push back against him or call him out on any of his BS?
Well, when I met him, he was widely regarded as a self-promoting asshole who could draw attention to himself. This is now no secret, but he was absolutely not taken seriously in real estate. But he did understand give to get politics. And when he really needed to build his Trump Tower around or a new hotel where the Grand Hyatt now was, he gave huge contributions to Mayor Abeam's top aides and commissioners, and got okays and tax abatements, which he didn't deserve. And so he was not like on my radar. He pretended to be a Democrat. For example, I helped run Gary Hart's presidential race. For those of you who are under 108 years old, he ran credibly for president in 1984, losing the nomination to Mondale, who in turn lost to Reagan. So I met him at the fundraiser I organized, a few hundred people. He gave his money. In fact, when I ran for mayor, I was well ahead of a guy named, I knew I'd remember, Mike Bloomberg.
Ah, yes.
And I was 20 points ahead to be the next mayor of New York. And I had a primary on September 11th, 2001.
Right.
And at 8 o'clock a.m., I was 20 points ahead of Bloomberg. And it ended up in a 50-48 race that he won because 9/11 plus the $75 million were kind of important numbers. Trump gave me the maximum contribution anyone could give. I think at the time it was $5,400. I have not given the money back. He gave it either because he ardently believed in my views and integrity, or he wanted to give money to whoever the likely next mayor of New York. So I didn't do anything corrupt or illegal. And then when he started running for president, a little in 2000, a little in 2012, and then of course in 2016, like everybody, I thought this is what a joke.
Right.
The rest is history. Now he knew things that we didn't. If you would ask me what percentage of the vote could someone like that get, running as an ardent right winger and a charismatic buffoon, I would have said 25 to 30% given party loyalties. I was wrong.
Right.
It turned out to be, if you added up mainstream Republicans and nationalist reactionaries and those who hated Hillary, it was 46%. Hillary got 48%, lost
Right.
for the electoral college. So Trump understood something about the psyche. And in the book, we talk about how he says exaggerate, use hyperbole. People don't check out issues. They like to feel good. So he was always the best. It was going to be a terrific tax plan. It's going to be a great healthcare plan, which he never introduced. And there are enough credulous, angry people that he could combine two elements into not a plurality,
Right.
into majority electoral college. The 1% elite who fund everything, and the 60% low income, low education white workers, 60% being the percent that vote for him over Hillary Clinton, who got 30%. That's illegal, but astonishing. And so
Right.
the top and the bottom of the white scale, because he got next to no people of color in that election.
So let me talk about this Trump bullshit detector that you created, because the Washington Post fact checked his presidency. He was up over 30,700 false claims, misleading claims, flat out lies in 4 years. And he actually accelerated his pace of lying. According to them, he started in his first year, 6 lies a day. By his fourth year, 39 lies a day. I mean, he wears people down. How do you even begin to start pulling out, your bullshit meter must have been going off the charts.
Here's a problem. Whenever you say a politician is an unusually effective liar, like Trump, to some, his supporters say, they all lie, which technically could be true.
Right.
But there's a difference between an elephant and a flea on an elephant. And I don't think Obama lied. I don't think Biden lies, but they would get things wrong from time to time. So they would come up with a machine gun of excuses and alibis to forgive each and every lie. Oh, he forgot. Oh, he was just joking. Oh, Democrats are racists. Remember, Bob Byrd ended up majority leader of the United States Senate, was, in fact, in the Klan when he was a young man. So no matter the criticism, he would always talk his way around it, ignore the question, deny the question, cherry pick one example, engage in what's called in shorthand, both sidesism and what aboutism. Oh, Hillary, she was a crook with her emails. Okay, that shows that he can assert anything. It's hard to disprove in a quick interview. So one by one, each lie is like, what the hell? But when you put it together, as Glenn Kessler did in the Washington Post, a fact checker, the holistic view is of someone who doesn't just exaggerate or lie. There's a messianic, malicious narcissism involved. Yeah, all politicians are narcissistic. Gee, why should I be mayor over another 8 million people? And you need that ego and drive to win. Something's different going on with him. And while every elected politician likes to be liked, likes to get a majority of the vote and draw donations, every single thing that he had to decide was seen through the prism of me, myself, I. Everything. The only exceptions being maybe his family. And so when John Kennedy had to make life and death decisions in Cuba in 1962, he didn't say, how will this affect my reelection? I suspect it was he used his analytic experience to come up with the best letter to Khrushchev. Trump can't do that. Everything is, so whenever he talked, he would say, my generals, my judges.
Right.
It's a tip off to someone who he didn't care. So he could say, initially as a joke, I could lie to everybody. I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and my supporters would still believe me. They
Right.
amended that I could lie to my supporters 30,000 times and they'd still believe me. Why?
Right. I want to ask about, and you talk about that in the book. You also look at historical precedent from Woodrow Wilson to Teddy Roosevelt to Richard Nixon, but nobody controlled and bypassed the fourth estate the way Trump did. His Twitter account, he was the greatest manipulator of social media. The fact that they've now pulled the plug, is that the stake in his heart? Is he going to go away now? Or do you think he says he's going to create his own, new network and social media platform? Was that basically his biggest and really his only weapon to incite such huge crowds, things?
Well, it's a little untrue. Trump was way better at social media than Lincoln, for example. A tiny joke, but the essence of it is that all prior presidents, to different degrees, had to respect the big three networks, the major and local media. He had a way around that blockage. So he could speak directly. Eventually, he was listed as having 80 million followers. That's exaggerated for technical reasons. At the same time, Barack Obama, who wasn't president then and now, has 100 million. But clearly, when he would use his bully pulpit, his bullshit pulpit, to say that his wall would stop illegal immigration, that Hillary was a crook when it came to her emails. He could speak to people who hated more than they loved, hated liberals and blacks and reds more than they loved America. And I don't have to tell you, history is just this continuing contest between hate and hope.
Right.
And neither side always wins, but animosity, from Hitler going against the Jews to the Tsar and the proletariat in Russia in 1917, hating on a good enemy can get you pretty far.
Right.
And so Trump, by innuendo with people of color, because you're not allowed to use the N-word, but basically he's a guy with a white hood using the N-word, but he talks around it. Like
Right.
when he says, oh, if Biden wins, the Secretary at HUD hurting our suburbs housing would be someone like Cory Booker.
Yeah.
Very talented, brilliant guy. He happens to be black.
Right.
And so we know what he was doing. When it comes to liberals and cities, oh my God, he would openly say that it's not blue states. I mean, that alone is impeachable.
Right.
I mean, when Texas had his problems with his electric grid recently, he funneled monies to them. Of course, Texas didn't go for Biden.
Let me ask, beyond politics, though, the sum outcome of his lies and 4 years of mistruths and deceptions, I think he wore down the truth. I mean, he grinded it into a pulp. So now his 74 million people that voted for him, right from the get-go, he lied about the inauguration numbers. He has Kellyanne Conway putting out the term, there's alternative facts. And then right to the very end saying the election was stolen. And he still holds on to that base. So how do we combat, the average citizen, the voter, the person who's going to hold this republic together if they don't even believe in the truth anymore because he's hammered it for 4 years? How do we repair that?
That's a big question. And I'll need more than 30 minutes to answer if I had the answer. Right. Number one, we don't have to persuade everybody. Politics is at the margins. And Biden got
I'm sorry, Mark, you froze on me there.
Asians, Jews, professionals, and add to that, not 30% of the low income, low education white vote. But 40%, you have a landslide. Now, how do you do that? Well, they're not all these fanatics who, went to the insurrection. And I think when you combine the documentation that Trump was a liar, and now his party are all mini-me's imitating him, saying crazy things to square the circle of what the caca that they're saying with what people want. So if I'm right, not just as a Democrat, and people want to build child poverty cut in half, which is what Biden is doing, at some point, some of them may go, zero Republicans voted for the COVID bill. Zero Republicans will vote for the infrastructure bill. I'm personally benefited. Maybe I'll think about a Biden. So over time, but the reason this is hard for the most diehard Trump people is it's not politics or truth, it's psychology. Here are people who, for reasons of racial animosity or economic insecurity or both, have glommed onto, think about any listener here. It's irrational if you're a Met fan, if they lose to Cincinnati, you feel bad, right? It's baseball. Or someone's religion. You love Israel because you're Jewish, but you can't look away from what they did in Gaza. That's one thing. But when you're dealing with Trump, you're dealing with that level of, that's my religion, that's my sports team, that's my guy. I like, blonde hair, and he's famous from The Apprentice. People who entered Nazis after World War II.
I'm sorry, the internet connection was faltering there.
I don't understand their psyche. They couldn't admit that killing a little Jewish child, oh my God, what did I do? Several of them think that Cincinnati is better than the New York Mets. You pulled out a cornerstone of their life and beliefs from under them, and they felt empty. They felt like their whole life was wrong. And so all of us have been in the business of dealing with a relative or friend, a neighbor who votes for Trump. You then I've done this all the time. You walk through 20 horrible things that he's done, including a couple 100,000 needless deaths from COVID-19 to encouraging an insurrection of the government that he was heading. Those are pretty bad things.
Right.
They go, yeah, but, and they come up with any reason to defend their cornerstone belief. I sometimes want to say to them, people used to always say to me, oh, Hillary, ugh, I hate her. And I would want to say to this slightly intelligent person, you don't like aggressive women, right? Now, they would punch me if I said that. A lot of it had to do with male insecurity. And when people say this about Trump, I want to say, what is it in your history that makes you, not all Republicans are racists, obviously. Nearly all racists are Republicans. So why do you love the guy who racists love? Now, if I had said that, I maybe did it once, cut away without fisticuffs. That person wouldn't talk to me ever again. You can't get candid with it. Conclusion, if you combine Trump's plummeting favorability, he ended up at 34% in Gallup, the lowest since Carter and Nixon.
Right.
And you combine that with Biden's obviously pleasant personality, any child can see that. And if he delivers more jobs and less COVID, you're dealing with the potential for a realignment, which happens once a century. It happened in 1932, after Hoover and the Depression led to Roosevelt and the New Deal. And while it's frustrating to figure out how to appeal to these people, we don't need them all. I'm telling you that if Biden holds the Democratic base, which is I mentioned of professionals, intellectuals, um, minorities. Uh, and he has just a few minorities, not racially, but in the South, for example, low-income whites. You potentially have a governing coalition that could last a while. And I couldn't say whether the Republicans will fight back to even because of the electoral college, gerrymandering, money, voter suppression,
Right.
the whole system is in favor of them. But if it breaks, as I say, because if Trump is down and Biden is up and the situation is looking better, I can't tell you where America will be headed, but in 22 and 24, it really could be a different looking country.
Right. So let's assume that Trump's just going to kind of slink away and stay at Mar-a-Lago and play a lot of golf. Let's try to put some historical context on him. You mentioned in the beginning of this book that you read some biographies, Lenin, Hitler, Mussolini, some of the all-time most horrible, oppressive, authoritarian regimes. Where do you place Trump in that?
Well, you're not allowed to say, so I'm admitting PC. Oh, Trump is like Hitler because of this. No one's like Hitler. Hitler is Hitler. But what's interesting is everyone, when you hear the word Hitler, name Hitler, you think of Hitler post 1938, Kristallnacht, World War II, and you think of the genocidal Hitler and the Holocaust. In the early 1930s in Germany, a popular chancellor legally, but stupidly, gave the chancellery over to Hitler, who he thought he could trust because he was a clown. And the bourgeoisie, trying to protect their wealth, didn't take Hitler seriously. And so inch by inch, row by row, he started to build his dictatorship. And so technically Hitler got elected legally because of the system in Germany. So Trump, obviously, Hillary outvoted him by a lot, but he won the electoral college. I think he's illegitimate in terms of he can't do the job, couldn't do the job, but he's legally the president. And so the dictators you mentioned, what they really have in common with Trump is they understood the tactical lie. If you repeat a lie often enough, said Joseph Goebbels, the famous propaganda minister under Hitler, people will begin to believe it. And then when you hit a certain critical mass, then you don't want to be the out person on your block or your community. And so there's a group thing that leads people to say, yeah, the Jews stabbed us in the back in World War I. And then a generation later, they said, what were our parents thinking? There is a group thing among forever Trumpers that is a pathology. It's like a Jonestown and the followers who drank the Kool-Aid. And it's pathetic and scary. I'm not speaking only as a Democrat's capital D, but as a small d, a Democrat, because we came this close to losing it all. When he said that, oh, he won by a lot, and of course, I won't bother you with the evidence to the contrary.
Right.
If a couple of local Republicans in Georgia had given in to his phone calls and said, you know what, we don't know who won, let's throw it to the House of Representatives, or in Michigan, and each, it was close. If it had been thrown to the House of Representatives, the current system is that the House voting with each state delegation voting as one vote. I think there were 26 Republican delegations, 24 Democratic. Then it would have been a kind of like stolen election of Tilden Hayes. It would have gone for Trump, despite 7 million margin. And I tell you, as it is now, there may be violence in our future because the people who believe Trump have most of the guns, few of the facts, are the mob.
Right.
January 6th. So it's quite important that Biden succeed to help people to form a nascent and growing progressive majority. So a lot of this is in the rearview mirror.
So two things. Do you think we're done with Trump? Do you think he'll try to run again in 2024? And what kind of grade do you give Biden so far between a D and an A?
As for Trump, I really don't think he's going to run because there's no loss in saying I'm going to run. Money comes in small donations, people visit you in Mar-a-Lago, but the man didn't come close to a majority in either election.
Right.
He's more hated now than when he started in 2016. And between now and then, between now and then, a pope may be born, as a term in the catechism. Between now and then, he is going to be indicted by the state of New York, by the Manhattan district attorney, maybe by Georgia district attorneys. Yesterday, the highest court in New York upheld the civil lawsuit against him of a woman who said that he had manhandled her.
Right.
And the suit was not based on manhandling her and sexually abusing her, but he then said she was a liar. He never did it. Okay, I'm suing you for defamation. And you did do it. Show me that you, and he then has to be deposed under oath. He doesn't want to do that.
Right.
So a lot of the women who've been slandered by him will get a lot of money from him because he won't fight the lawsuits. They'll win with summary judgment. So he's going to get punched around a lot. And he's at his peak when the election was held, and he'll be, he had 90% favorable rating left off on Republicans. It's now at 75%. That's pretty good. It's not 90%. So the trend line is bad. As for Biden, based on expectation, an A to an A plus, really, because the expectation was artificially low. Oh, right. He doesn't have all his marbles. He's living in the basement. He's some kind of crazy socialist without belaboring it. None of that's true. And he's beaten all those benchmarks. On the merits, yesterday they nominated 16 judges. By this point, the 4 prior presidents had each averaged 2 or 3. I mention that because the big bill has gotten enacted. Trump had one big bill enacted, the tax cut mostly for the rich, and it happened months later. And of course, Obama had one or more big bills, Obamacare, and that happened a year later. So Biden, it's quite interesting. People would have said, smart people would have said, oh, Biden's not going to get much done because of the 50-50 Senate and Vice President Harris breaking the tie. How can he get anything done? Because any one Democrat could screw up everything. It turns out solidarity works.
Right.
And because the disloyal opposition is so radical and crazy, Democrats held together from Warren to Manchin. But we'll see what happens, on the filibuster and on the For the People Act. So Biden is in a very enviable situation. FDR famously was sort of as a kind of gentlemanly suburban guy, not a genius. Oliver Wendell Holmes said he has a first-class temperament, but a second-class intellect. Biden was underestimated. He would say because he went to public college.
Right.
Stuff. But it turns out his experience has helped him because when they sit in a room with his aides, some of them may have higher IQs, I don't know. No one knows more than him about how to maneuver an idea into law than he does.
Right. He's kind of learned a bit of a master of the Senate. He knows how to get legislation through. But let me ask you, pivot to New York State politics, of which you are familiar as a candidate and as an elected official. We've got a crisis now with the governor, multiple investigations, sexual harassment, improper reporting of nursing home COVID deaths, the Tappan Zee Bridge, defective bolt issue. We have a mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, that was always at war with Cuomo. How is the state functioning right now, do you think?
Poorly. Now, understandably, in the last year, the legislature has invested Cuomo with autocratic powers when it comes to public health.
Right.
They had to move quickly to lock down or not. vaccine sites, what have you. And every state has done that. The problem is that Andrew Cuomo, who I know well, who I once ran against for Attorney General, is a political thoroughbred. Pedigree, his name, his skills with Mario, who was brilliant in his ways, his work ethic and his focus.
Right.
But he's not an honest person.
In what
I don't
way?
think you could find someone in Albany who they may admire or fear. I don't know how many, if any, like him. Now, when President Ronald Reagan, under oath, said he didn't know anything about arms for hostages with Iran scandal, you may not remember it, some of the audience, but
Yep.
a huge scandal at the end of his presidency. He was this close to being indicted for perjury, if not impeached, because he had lied under oath. But then so many people, right, left, center, liked Reagan. He was an immensely likable guy who was a little, he can't remember everything, and that's true. Especially late in his presidency, he had incipient Alzheimer's, that's true.
Yes. Yep.
That when push came to shove, he had more friends than enemies, and he escaped. Andrew, at his moment of crisis, has more enemies than friends. And so when 100 people marched against Ceausescu in Romania, a Soviet puppet, 100 died. When 100,000 marched against Ceausescu, he died. And so we've hit a critical mass of women coming forward. None of them are Weinstein level, but some of them worked for him, which is quite improper if he did what was alleged. And the nursing home thing, I've had personal experience I don't have time to get into, where he appointed me to a commission and he lied to us on the commission about a major matter without getting into detail. And so I'm sure he filled with the numbers on nursing homes because he thought he wouldn't get caught. It was in his interest. Now, a lot of this will be coming out. My best bet is we're going from 100 protesting to 100,000. No one's going to get shot. But I believe that Andrew's savvy enough, powerful enough, that he can leverage his asset. Bloomberg had an asset, this money. Elizabeth Warren has an asset, her intellect, seriously. Andrew has an asset. He's in the governor's office. He can leverage that and indirectly or explicitly say to the assembly, hey, look, don't embarrass me. Don't impeach me, which risks conviction. I will publicly say I'm not going to run again. So somebody can succeed me. Let me leave on my own terms. Now, a version of that did happen with Vice President Spiro Agnew, who,
Yes.
separate and apart from Nixon and Watergate, was a corrupt local governor in Maryland who took bribes. And the then special counsel allowed him to plead to a lesser offense because of the rational, maybe unlawful, but the rational argument, I don't want a provably corrupt vice president succeeding and impeached and exiting Nixon. And so Andrew, I think, can hang on until and if Letitia James' investigation shows a series of bad behaviors, and or that leads someone like Joe Biden, who was Andrew's friend, political friend, to say he should leave. That would pull the rug out from under Andrew. And he's gone through this before. I'm sorry for the length. In 2002, he thought he was going to be the governor of New York State.
Right.
He told me, because I'm quoted, every Black New Yorker has 3 pictures on his or her wall. Remember, I'm quoted. He said it to me. Jesus Christ, John Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy. And I went to myself, what? What's he talking about? He was then married to Robert Kennedy's daughter.
Right.
So he was a Kennedy by marriage. A, it's amazing to think like that, but B, it's amazing to say it. And so when he was pushed out by prominent Black New Yorkers because Carl McCall, his opponent, ranking Black official in the state, ranking Democrat in the state, and he left the race so long as then President Bill Clinton lauded him on the way out. So it was a deal, and it worked out because he would have lost the governor's office, and he survived, and here we are now.
Right.
So I predict there'd be some kind of deal, although it's hard to, but I'd be shocked if he ran and won.
Yeah, but there's a
close question.
Where do you stand on a majority of lawmakers, many editorial writers for newspapers, and a large number of the public want him to resign immediately. The other want to let Letitia James's investigation play out. Which do you favor?
Well, because my vote, my opinion on your show won't control it, I think he should resign because he has such a terrible temperament. He is engaged in so much interpersonal imperialism. I'll destroy you if you do that. I mean, I can't believe that Barack Obama ever said that to an opponent. Andrew says that like he breathes.
Right.
So his belligerent temperament and dishonesty, I don't think he should have won governor originally. He did. When you compound those defects with him coming on to women without consent, especially those who may have worked for him, I think he should have resigned. Now, that's not up to me. And I understand due process Democrats. Due process really means when you're in court and you're at risk of being imprisoned or executed, the state has to show by, beyond a reasonable doubt you're guilty. That's not true in politics, obviously.
Right.
But fairness matters. And Tish James is in a tough spot, but she got elected with Andrew's help.
Right.
And I now believe that most people think that Tish will look at the evidence and say what she thinks, because Andrew now does not control her.
Right.
And she has no motive to exaggerate. Of course, she could run for governor.
That's what I wanted to ask. So let's say he doesn't finish out this term. Do you think Kathy Hochul, lieutenant governor, could run the state? And secondly, if he does finish the term, who would you think would be the leading candidates to become the next governor?
Kathy Hochul is a delightful, serious Erie County Democrat who will become the governor if Andrew leaves.
Right.
We haven't had really a competitive statewide official that's a Republican. I'm sorry, a credible statewide aspirant, whether Democrat or Republican, for decades. The state has shifted blue. And it's extremely hard for someone upstate to raise the money because the money is in Manhattan, and have a voting block. Half the vote statewide in primaries, which is where this would be decided,
right,
is New York City. 2/3 is Westchester South. So I think she'll be a competent governor. I think it'll be very hard for her to win a competitive primary. No one would say, oh, I can't run. A Democratic woman is already the governor. She hadn't won. And then I guess Tish James could be competitive. Tom DiNapoli, of course, has been a statewide official, as controller for 12 or 16 years, is competitive. Right. Then there are younger talents in the delegation. Kathleen Rice is a congresswoman in the South Shore of Long Island, so she kind of represents, not a hardcore left district, but she gets votes. She's a centrist, a Democrat, could be competitive. But then you don't know whether some Lou Lehrman, if you're old enough to remember.
Yeah, I remember Lou.
Mario Cuomo, because he had a lot of money. Mike Bloomberg allegedly had a lot of money, or he stole $75 million to spend it against me. And so some credible business, but that happens rarely, for a variety of reasons. Rockefeller was one exception to the rule. Bloomberg is an exception to the rule. And let me end with a personal story, if I could. When when Bloomberg made up 20 points because of saturation spending and wins by 2, I said to a friend, I feel like Bing Crosby, who once said, a talent like Frank Sinatra comes along once every several generations. Why did it have to be mine? Bloomberg came out of nowhere, and it's a big state with a lot of billionaires, so who knows?
So finally, are you done with elected politics, or do you plan or think about running again for anything?
No.
No.
Now, among other reasons is I've been married 42 years, which is a personal best, by the way. And I'd like to continue that record run. I have a lovely professional wife, 2 adult children, 3 grandchildren. And so personally, now second, people would often say to me after I lost narrowly, oh, you should run again. Oh, I really like you. I go, listen, thank you for liking me. By the way, people don't come up and say, I hate you, don't run.
Right.
So you hear disproportionately from favorable people. They say, look, it's not like Tom Seaver gets shelled in a game and then 4 rotations and then a rotation later comes back and pitches a no-hitter. When you lose for mayor, I made 30,000 phone calls to raise money. I tapped everybody I've ever met to help me.
Right.
And to start all over is why most people win in their first offices and are competitive in their 40s or their 50s. And Biden is an exception.
Right.
He's 78. Biden's the exception that proves the rule because, well, he has lost a step. I mean, please, anybody listening, think about yourself 30 years ago.
Right.
You're a little quick on a 100-yard dash or on television, yes. But he had some deep-seated need to be president. And I experienced Joe in 2000, right after Gore was nominated. He hadn't yet lost. And right after Gore was nominated, Biden said to me at the convention, hey, Mark, how does President Biden sound to you in 4 years? That's amazing.
Right.
Because he may have thought it, but Gore had just been nominated.
Right.
And he failed twice. And it's a statement to his character and drive and optimism that a man who lost 2 children and then an adult child and got like 0 and 1% in his 2 races. Of course, this time he was running as former vice president, had it in him, knowing what it took to run, win, and serve. And that, by and large, irrespective of his age, is a tremendous tribute to him.
Absolutely. So the book is Wrecking America, how Trump's lawbreaking and lies betray all, co-authored with your good friend Ralph Nader. A shout out to your wife, who's recognized as helping with some of the research. Mark Green, this has been a great pleasure. Thanks for joining us on the conversation.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it so much. You're very good at this. I hope I measured up.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you.